Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here coming to you with the first update of the 2021 Canadian federal election forecast. So as I'm sure anyone watching this video is aware, Trudeau went in and to the Governor General today and asked for Parliament to get dissolved. So there's going to be an election. The date is September 20th, and that is basically what this series has been building up to. This election, which I figured has been going to happen. Most people have figured who have been looking into this kind of stuff has figured it was going to happen. So just some brief update facts regarding the model before I go into any changes in the forecast right now and what I think could be going on going forward. So we are in campaign mode now in the model. So the difference between campaign mode and not campaign mode is um, the seat totals are more volatile. The popular vote shares are more volatile. There's going to be more movement in poll over poll, so don't be surprised if it looks like, especially right now, that there's a big spike going on for any particular party because it is campaign mode. So there's going to be a larger, rapider change in what the model projects based on what polls have come out and which polls have entered. Just as a housekeeping note, I'm not going to make a video for every single poll that comes out, but anytime that there is a meaningful change in the projection, I am going to try to make a video. We'll see. I'm a busy person. I'll do my best. At minimum, I will do one video per week, so that's to keep my Sundays up, so probably at least five more. But I'm going to see if I can try to get more if there's polls. As always, if there isn't polls, I'm not going to make a projection because that projection doesn't mean anything. There's no new data to it. With all that to do, let us look at day 0 changes. So there's been a lot of polls this week. You've had an Abacus poll, you've had a Angus Reid poll, a Main Street poll, a Ledger poll, Nanos polls. So 5 polls in the last 4 days. So a lot of new data has entered the model, and as a result, several things have changed. So starting west to east, so the Liberals have picked up a seat in Saskatchewan. I think I didn't look specifically. I believe that this is Saskatoon West. West, I think. They already picked up Regina West. Sorry, Saskatchewanians, I'm not 100% on your writings. I don't think these are necessarily real writings. I don't think on election day they will actually carry these, but the model is forecasting them advantageous in this position. But the important thing to know with any forecast model, mine, 338 Canada's, anyone else's, this is forecasting if people's polling intentions are true. But in reality, people's polling intentions are fake. I do try to adapt to that, but it's hard to specifically know. And when I say fake, I mean, you see it a lot with NDP vote. I don't necessarily think people polling NDP are lying. I just think on election day, a lot of people say they're going to vote X and strategically vote for a different party. And I think that'll benefit the Conservatives in Saskatchewan. Normally it benefits Liberals in Ontario. Likewise, the Liberals have picked up a seat the NDP have picked up a seat from the Liberals in Ontario, going up to 77. I think it's a Toronto riding, but it doesn't really particularly matter. One seat, as you probably see it, the Liberals are up 3 seats from the last projection, and Conservatives are down 2 in the Blocs, down 1. Conservatives picked up a seat in Quebec, and Bloc has lost a seat. This is Trois-Rivières, so Conservatives flip back. NDP have lost a seat to Quebec, or to the Liberals, which, as many of you probably have noticed when I first updated the model, I made a correction to the model which gave NDP it looked like the NDP was gaining seats in Quebec. I didn't think that was real. I think this is a more likely outcome. I think the Liberals getting less than 35 seats in every prior projection of Quebec was probably not real, but we're back to where I think it is real. I think this is a very plausible result on election day. And I'm noticing here I made a slight error in this picture. I forgot to put the Conservative vote total, seat total in New Brunswick. It's 3, so the Liberals have picked up a seat in New Brunswick from the Conservatives. I believe this is Fredericton, or it could be Miramichi. I'm not 100% certain because I've not been paying. I've been paying attention, but I don't remember what they had. The last update last update was August 1st, so I don't remember what it was 2 weeks ago. It's Miramichi or Fredericton, one of the two of them. So yeah, that's where we are with the base projection. Interesting moves going on. It does look like the Conservatives are gaining ground in Quebec. Actually, we can better see it this way. So if we go here, the Conservatives are up 0.5 week over week. Again, that's because we're in campaign mode. Things are more volatile. There's going to be more movement in the polls. Previously, I was in pre-election polling trend, so an individual poll was less impactful. And the average was more important than the newest poll. Other notes here, so most of Atlantic Canada, the Conservatives have gained some ground. They're holding in New Brunswick. Liberals lost some ground. Most of Atlantic Canada but gained a bit in New Brunswick. NDP have been doing better across the board, and Green Party's been doing worse across the board. Now they are polling at 3.6%, or polling forecasted at 3.6% in my model. Not doing so hot. PPC's down at forecasting 1.6. I think that's just an anomaly because some of the last couple polls, like Nanos and Ledger, have never, or was it? Yeah, Nanos and Ledger don't typically poll very well for the PPC. So I think this is a bit of an anomaly. We'll see going forward. There was a lot of support for other in the last couple polls, so possibly Wexit is going to could be chewing into the right of the Tories. I don't think it's really going to matter. I think in practice, a lot of the people who say they're going to vote Maverick probably will end up strategic voting on election day to stop a Liberal government winning, which is, I think, the correct thing to do. Not because the Maverick Party necessarily is stupid or its ideas are stupid, but if you are voting or expressing interest in a particular party like that, which the Maverick Party is essentially when you're polled and you say you want to vote the Maverick Party, that's essentially saying to politicians, you're unsatisfied with the current state of affairs. And knowing the policies that the Maverick Party wants and knowing where their support is, it's clearly conservative voters who are dissatisfied with the current state of affairs of the Conservative Party. They don't feel like they're getting their concerns actually addressed. But come election, the goal then is to express these concerns, and it's basically an implicit threat to the Conservative Party in this case. It's like, we're not going to just happily stick with you if you don't do anything for us. You have to actually address our concerns. But come election day, there's probably going to be strategic voting, and there should be, because it's better to have a lukewarm party than a bad party, in your perspective. If you're a Maverick voter, you probably hate the Liberals. Otherwise, I don't really know why you're voting for a Maverick Party. Liberals are like the epitome of Canadian federalism. The only reason to not vote, if you're voting against, if you want them to win, you wouldn't be voting for a decentralization party. That's all. That's all I'm saying there. Liberals have been losing a bit of steam in Ontario. The Conservatives are not gaining it. It looks like the NDP is actually picking up some steam. Like, this is a pretty substantial 0.9 jump here, and the Conservatives are just kind of flatlined, maybe going down a bit in Ontario. We'll see. Several of the polls that came out in the last couple days were pretty poor for the Liberals in Ontario, but there's a couple that were strong, so it held the floor for them, so they're not like collapsing. But if that trend keeps going, that could be really bad for the Liberals. We'll see. I think the places to watch for this election is Quebec. Specifically, not anything the Liberals are doing in Quebec, not anything the NDP, not anything the Greens, not People's Party, not other. It's the Bloc Conservative interplay. My suspicion is a lot of northeastern Quebec seats, Quebec City, like inner Quebec City, Trois-Rivières, like places like Jonquière. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Sorry, Quebecers. I think those will be very competitive for the Conservatives in this election, and they might even flip them. And I wouldn't be surprised. There is a very strong undercurrent among Francophone voters in Quebec that nativism, pro-natalist policies, pro-cultural assimilation policies, anti-immigration policies are getting a lot of traction in the Francophone population in Quebec, which have always been more of a right-wing position in Canada, which I think is going to help, is pushing the Francophone population right-wing. The Francophone population is becoming progressively more decentralist. It's always been decentralist, but it's getting more so, and the Conservative Party, the People's Party, are more decentralist than any of the left-wing parties. Which is also going to push these voters to the further to the right. And I think there is a growing assessment in the West among working class population, which a lot of Quebec's northeast /northeast area, there's a good amount of that, large number of that there. It seems to be there's a growing consensus that left-wing policies are not helping the working class. And I think that is pushing them also further to the right. So I think there is a very strong case for not this election, though I think the Conservatives will probably do well in this election if they campaign well, in Quebec specifically. And well is in air quotes. I don't think they're going to win Quebec. I don't think they're going to get the most seats in Quebec, but I think they're going to significantly improve their 2019 performance with a good campaign. Though there is the case we made that in the next couple years, next decade or so, I think we will see a big swing here. We've seen it in places in the US and the UK. The red wall in the UK or the Midwest in the US, the quote-unquote blue wall, went from being very strong left-wing areas to being much more competitive for right-wing parties and possibly even leaning right default. So it's no longer the right's trying to take the seats, it's the left's trying to take the seats. So I think there is some case we made there that might be happening in Quebec, starting to happen in Quebec. It's not already there, it is starting there. Like, the ball just started getting rolling probably around the last 2 years. So we'll see. But I would expect that to be a big deal going forward. I think you're also probably seeing a similar trend in the Maritimes. The Maritimes does have another overcurrent though, where the older population, and when I say older, I mean 35 plus really, is more... Liberal's the wrong word. They are default liberal voters. They vote for the Liberal Party by default because the other parties, for various reasons, I'm not saying it's an unfounded belief, as a Nova Scotian myself, there seems to be a strong undercurrent that is the default position to vote for, and you only vote NDP or Conservative if you're unhappy with the Liberals. Whereas, for example, in Saskatchewan and Alberta, right now it's kind of the opposite. You vote Conservative by default, and Liberal or NDP if you're upset with the Conservatives, or possibly PPC or WEG or Maverick or whatever. But the younger generation in the Maritimes, I think, is much more conservative. And if you look at, for example, Nova Scotia, more working class areas in Nova Scotia have already started the transition from being voting left-wing parties to voting right-wing parties. Cape Breton, specifically, strong working class area, or traditionally has been. I mean, it's been gutted in the last 20 years or so, but has historically been a strong working class area and is now a stronghold for the provincial Conservative Party. Where in the last 20 years it has happened. In the 90s, in the 80s, it wasn't. It was the stronghold for the NDP, stronghold for the Liberals, provincially, and that has flipped. And I think we're starting to see that in 2019 federally, with both seats in Cape Breton were very competitive for the Conservatives, and I think they're still very competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if they get flipped this election, even with this vote share difference. It's that close. The other trend going on right now in Canadian politics is that urban areas across the country are getting more progressive. And when I say progressive, I specifically mean the political ideology. Nothing more to that term. Progressive politically. Which is... Progressivism is kind of like a interesting combination of traditional liberal and socialist. It's like kind of a weird intermix of the two of them. So it's kind of hard to classify, but it is definitely further left than any party in Canada has. It's like kind of like the NDP's position. If you're very politically, if you're a new viewer and you're not very into political discourse, like the progressive policies are kind of like the NDP, but it's becoming more and more mainstream for the Liberal Party and more common in the urban areas in Canada. So I think we're going to see places like BC, where I strongly still believe the Conservatives get the most seats in BC and the most votes in BC. I think it's going to become even more competitive for the Liberals because I think Vancouver is transitioning away from the Conservatives more as a more progressive political viewpoint and probably become a Liberal stronghold in the next 10 years. At the same token, I think a lot of the Maritimes and Quebec is going to probably transition to be more conservative. The prairies are kind of hard to say. There's a lot of other undercurrents that are hurting Liberals and the NDP more so than these other these greater trends. So really, that's kind of hard to say. And Ontario, it's also kind of hard to say because Ontario is basically as a Nova Scotian, Ontario is basically Canada when it comes to politicians. They only care about Ontario. They only vote. Like, they campaign to Ontarians. So, where they feel relative to Canada doesn't matter because they're the default. Everyone is relative to Ontario. Sad but true. But now let's break into some of these trend lines. So, the Conservatives are kind of all over the place. If you remove these two outliers here, there's a slight upward trend. But if we don't exclude those, there's no trend. Liberals look like they're actually gaining some ground. But again, I think this is a bit of an illusion because I've switched to campaign mode and it has shifted them quite quickly. Whereas I think we were in campaign mode for the last 4 weeks. That shift would have happened back here and it would look like they're stagnating. Now, so right here at 0.9, they are going up, and that is a strong enough R-score that I would say they're gaining ground. I'm not sure if they're going to hold that ground. It's really hard to say right now. NDP is definitely going upward, gaining some steam. My 2 cents is they're gaining all of their steam on the back of the Green Party losing steam. They're just getting the disaffected Green voters. And I think a lot of that's true with the Liberals too. I think most of the Liberal steam right now is disaffected Green Party voters coming to them after the Green Party decided to shoot itself in the face in the back of the head. They shot themselves both in the face and the own back of their head in June, July, when everyone knew that there was an election coming up this fall. It's literally suicide. I have no idea what the Green Party leadership is thinking. Not Paul herself, but like the committees and the people who have been removing her from power. Literally makes no sense. It's the stupidest decision I've seen in Canadian politics. And that includes everything Singh's done, and I'm a really strong critic of how Singh acts as a politician. I think he's kind of a fool, but it's gonna mask his foolishness because the Green Party committed suicide right in front of all our eyes at this moment. Maybe Paul will recover, but right now it looks like the Green Party's trending to disaster. And I'm not the only one forecasting this too. 338 Canada is also strongly forecasted, or is projecting a strong decrease in net support for the Green Party. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Bear with me a second. Just checking something. So since August 1st, 338 Canada has projected a 0.8% decrease in Green Party support. It's not quite as drastic as mine because August 1st. It's more drastic than mine. My drop happened earlier. Like I had them at 4.9 and they're at 3.55 now. So he has them at higher. He has them like 4.8. So like 1.3% higher than mine. But his has always been a bit higher than mine for green. Different models, different things. And like always, I will throw out to him. If you're interested in this stuff, definitely check out his website, 338 Canada. Philip Fournier, pretty good at this. Cross-reference our two sources. Make your mind from there. PPC here, to get back to the graphs, they took a bump, but I think that is probably just a temporary outlier. We'll see next couple weeks. Block is, it looks like they're upwarding trend, but they had a bump and now they're flatlined. It was flat, then they went up, then it was flat. So really not movement there. So that kind of that wraps up basically the 2 cents here. So there's, well, we go back to this map here. The Liberals are at 165. They're 5 seats short of a majority in this proposal. I sat down, I've crunched the math on it based on my model. I'm going to do this in a better way and give you better graphics in the future, but this was, even though I knew this was going to be called today, I wasn't really thinking about it, and I didn't write scripts to do this, so I had to do this by hand, and it's a pain in the ass to do this by hand. There's 338 writings. It's a lot of writings. So I sat down and I computed all of the writings where the Liberals are, well, all of the parties are within 20 percentage points of popular vote, 10 percentage points, and with 1 percentage point of the current projected leader. And with that, there's 70 seats where that is true for the Liberals. So, in a best case scenario, they could win 235 seats. Almost certainly not going to happen because most of those are within 20. I'm going to rephrase this, are greater than 10 points away. And the reason why I use these cutoffs is kind of like forecasting odds, kind of. If you look at like 338 Canada's website, he kind of does the same thing. Like competitiveness, forecasting competitiveness of that seat for that party. And from what I've looked at many seats in the past, in many elections, and my general rule of thumb is a 20-point swing is something that can reasonably happen. More larger swings have happened, but really more than a 20-point swing. You know, like swing is the wrong word. Gaining 20 percentage points of popular vote, election over election, or from the forecast, is not likely. It's possible. It has happened. So we'll see going forward on that. But there's 70 seats that they're competitive in, that they're not leading. But my forecast has it really in the range of 12 that they could get. So there's 70 they're competitive in. Their best case scenario is about 177. So it is a majority. They can win a majority. Right now, because I literally just did this jerry-rigged with an Excel spreadsheet, I don't have what the other parties would have if they won all these contested seats, if they won this average, but that's what it is. So their best case scenario is about 177 right now. I'm expecting about 165. This is not an error bar. This is the best case scenario. There's a difference. I don't believe in error bars because we're not doing this multiple times. There's one September 20th election day. There's not going to be two. There's not going to be three. There's not going to be the 21 you would require for the minimum meaningful sample size. There's going to be one. This is not error bars. This is just their best case scenario. If they got, like, if you were to probabilistically flip all these seats based on the ads I have computed right now, they could theoretically win 12 more to get 177. Very unlikely, because this also assumes that every other party gets a bad flip on those. On all the seats. So, not an error bar. Best case scenario. The best case scenario for the Conservatives, the Conservatives are competitive in 86 more, so they could get 221, so theoretically they could have a supermajority. Very unlikely. I would say less than 0.01% chance, but theoretically possible. A non-zero possibility. They're competitive. Their best case scenario seems to be at 134, which would be a low minority, but given Stephen Harper in 2006 is not too unreasonable. It's a perfectly reasonable first minority for O'Toole if you were to basically have the Stephen Harper path of a minority into majority, which is probably the path conservative leaders are going to go into if the party keeps electing generic milquetoast people. And Aaron O'Toole appears to be generic and milquetoast. And I'm calling Stephen Harper generic and milquetoast in 2006. I did. If you're a conservative voter and you really like Stephen Harper, that's my hot take for the day. He became not milquetoast after he was in government, but when he hadn't been in government, he appeared milquetoast. After he was in government, he's like this marginally more interesting than milquetoast. He really didn't do actually that much crazy much right wing stuff. It was like mostly just better economic management, which is good, but like policy wise, not that interesting. NDP, we're skipping over Bloc for a second. They're competitive in about 42 seats, so theoretically could get 68. They only have their best case scenario though is much lower, about 33. Not great. I don't think there's going to be a big NDP breakthrough. Again, polling could change this, or campaigns could change this. Maybe if Singh decides to actually campaign well. Yes, I'm throwing shade at Singh. And campaign for people who are actually going to vote, because the last few months he's been campaigning to TikTok followers who don't vote. Kids don't vote. Newsflash. Probably not going to be much. Unsurprising where you'd be seeing these seats, like urban Maritimes, urban Ontario, a bit of rural, but mostly urban prairies. not that exciting. The bloc is has 16 seats they're competitive in, so 47 potential seats. Their best case scenario is around 35. Greens and People's Party and other are not interesting in this regard. Greens competitive in 2 right now, and you can only really win 1. People's Party is only competitive in 1, and they're almost certainly not going to win it. Sorry, Bernier, you're probably not going to win re-election in Boyce, or get elected again in Boyce. Sorry. Maverick is unlikely to win a single seat right now, though. Again, strong quotation mark on Maverick Party, because we don't know where the seat concentration is, where the vote concentration is. 338 Canada's kind of projecting it right now. I disagree with that because I don't think you can really project it. He might have some other data, some like local polling that he might be using, but based off of publicly available stuff that I can see, or the stuff I have paid for myself, there's not really anything there to suggest we know where it is. We can get it. We can guess. We can assume that the Wildrose Independence Party and the Maverick Party and stuff like that have correlation provincially, federally, but that's kind of shooting in the dark, and I don't believe in unnecessarily shooting in the dark. That's where it is. So all this to say, Liberal majority is possible. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. Liberal minority is almost certain. Conservative minority is potentially possible, but it would require, at the moment right now, it would require a lot of really good luck on election day. O'Toole has campaigned well historically in the 2017 conservative leadership race and the 2021. So I wouldn't count him out of the cards yet. But we're very, very likely going to see the most pointless election in our lifetimes. Almost certainly going to see another Liberal minority, Justin Trudeau still as Prime Minister, with some minor seat changes. Because right now, Liberals picking up 8 seats is a minor seat change. That literally doesn't matter. As long as the balance of power is one party, the election didn't matter. One other party. If it's 0 other parties or it's 2 other parties, the election did do something. If it's not one of those 2 outcomes, the Liberal government, with one other party required to do anything, the election was irrelevant and was a waste of $500 million. So, that is the state of affairs, day 1 of the election cycle. So I hope we all, day 0 technically. If you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe. I would like to get the word out, get people to hear the stuff. It would be greatly appreciated. It'd be the best way to help the channel if you like it. If you have any questions or comments, please comment below. I will read all of the comments. I mean, I don't really get that many, but I do read all of them, and I do appreciate them. Feels nice. Feels nice to read them. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you next video, which might be soon, depending on how much polling we get.